right, good evening, everybody. It's Saturday evening out there in Sierra Leone and Gambia, a little bit after 7 p.m. on your side, and on my side, it's a little bit after 2 p.m. from the East Coast in the USA. Today, this is the Weekend Talk Show with John and Beresford. John is all the way in the UK, and I'm in the USA. So we wanted to have an interesting discussion today. And if you're joining us, feel free to like and share, comment, and participate in this discussion. We are going to talk about sports and education. We want to discuss about how education and sport complement each other. What are the benefits that are out there? And how does that impact our youth and how they can empower themselves? So, a lot to talk about, and we want to make sure that you have an active participation. So, feel free to like and share this live and comment. Once you comment, we can post your comment on the screen and make sure we can respond to your question if you have any question. So, again, this is the weekend talk show. We know it's a Saturday evening. People are out and about, doing their usual errands. This is being broadcasted right now in multiple outlets. So it's being broadcast on YouTube, Twitter, or X. They changed their name. I can't get my head over the Twitter stuff. On Facebook and on Instagram. So before we get started, we're going to do a quick introduction. As you can see, and I don't know if you can notice it, we have two flags that are showing here. We have the Gambian flag and we have the Sierra Leone flag, and it is for a reason. It's by intention because we're both from different countries. So John and I, we go way back. We came across each other when we were both working for the same company out in Maryland. That was around 2008, 2010. And since that time, we developed a bond, a friendship. We've kept in touch on social media mostly. And he follows me and I follow him. John has done a great work, talking about sports, specifically football or soccer, if you are in the United States, because that's how they call it. In Africa and in Europe, we talk about football, right? But John is a sports enthusiast. He's an activist. He's a family man, just like myself. And so we've been talking offline, mainly around sports, football, and education. And we wanted to give people the opportunity to hear some of these things that we've been talking about, because we believe that some of the things that we're talking about, others can benefit from it, especially youths. So we've exchanged ideas a lot around sports. How can we improve our sports in Sierra Leone and Gambia? How can we impact change on our youths from an education and sport perspective? But most of these discussion is just private. So we thought that it is time for us to bring this discussion public and have others participate so that the policymakers can hear and that can spark their creative juice and begin to at least take some necessary action to help get our sports and education to the level that we wish it to be. So before you know going further, I like John to say something about himself beyond what I've just said. I know John, you're out there in UK, so like I said, I'm from Sierra Leone, and we have a mixed audience here, audience that are going to be from Gambia and audience from Sierra Leone. For the most part, some of my audience, they already know me, but they don't know you. So you would need to let them know you. And for me, I know the Gambian audience don't know me, but I've also been in Gambia. I actually lived in Gambia since it was 2001 February all the way to like August. I was going back and forth. I lived out at Banjul, Liman Street, and I enjoyed every bit of it. And when I went back, in 2006, I actually visited Gambia again. I stayed there for about a week, and then I moved over to Sierra Leone. And then on my way back to the US, I stopped by in Gambia. It's a beautiful country. It's a beautiful place. And for those that don't know me in Gambia, I'm glad to be part of this discussion with John, and we're gonna have many discussions around this. And like I said, I'm from Sierra Leone, so thank you and welcome. And like you guys said in Gambia, I don't know, Nangadef is like, how are you, right?
Yeah, negative.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's all I can remember right now in Wolof. I don't, and I know how to say thank you, Joseph. I remember
Jerry
that.
Jeff. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So go ahead, John.
Well, thank you, Jerry Jeff, for having me over. It's a pleasure to come and join you on the weekend show. Basically, just exchange knowledge, exchange experiences. This is sports and education, but we may dive into leadership, which really ties into education or even sports, health and well-being, and some other areas that is worth discussing. Like he said, we met a long time ago and built a very respectful relationship and also an educated relationship, especially when we talk over the phone and exchange ideas. We learn from each other a lot. I also happen to, on the backdrop of this show, talked to a friend who connected me with a Sierra Leonean who lived in Gambia for 18 years. So basically, what I've learned from it is these two countries have the same fabric, similar fabric, but also share challenges too, a lot of challenges that we have in common. So hopefully, in this show, we'll talk more on these areas, and hopefully, the viewers too would enjoy it.
Great. Thank you very much, John. And when we talk about sports in the African context, what comes to mind typically it's going to be football, man. That's the number one sports in Africa. But there are so many areas in sports that we could focus on. But we want to limit our discussion, at least at this time, to football and some other areas. So talking about football, what do you think about the most recent AFCON competition that just completed? What's your thoughts around that?
Well, on an overall view, it's a very successful tournament. Um, since the expansion, now you are seeing smaller countries like Gambia and Namibia and Mauritania, the Cape Verdes and the Guinea-Bissaus having opportunity to be part of this continental showcase. And not just on that, if you look at the marketing side too, I think there was a report saying about 2 billion people were watching the AFCON all around the world. And that's about, 187, don't quote this number, countries that were showing it on their TV. So it was huge. You look at Ivory Coast too and the investment on that side, building training facilities for all the team that participated, building brand new stadiums, 4 brand new stadiums. So you can see the African game going into a very good direction in terms of monetizing the sports, making money out of the sports. It was very good. I liked it.
Yes. And I actually saw that trend way back in 2021. I was also very pleased with the competition in 2021. Of course, my country was there also, although we got kicked out at the group stage. But I was very pleased with their performance. It's been a while that we haven't made it to the finals, and we were there. So I was very impressed. And also, like you rightly said, Ivory Coast made a lot of investment, and things are moving in the right direction for sports and entertainment in the West African sub-region. But having said that, one thing that is prevalent and noticeably absent is the fact that Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Gambia, we haven't really made it to the the finals, meaning that we did not play the actual final to win the cup, right? We haven't, Sierra Leone haven't won the cup. We haven't been runners up. We haven't even got out of the group stage. And I think the same is true for Gambia. I'm not sure if Gambia have got out of the group stage at some point, but our ultimate goal is to see our teams out there winning that trophy, right? But I want us to take a look back and see the history here, right? So what you're seeing on the screen right now is a chart that shows the history of the African Nations Cup, right? So you can see that Egypt have won 7 times, right? We see Cameroon right there. We see Ivory Coast. We see Ghana and Nigeria. And these are the teams that have won the most since 1957. And then when you look at the runners up, right, you can see Ghana is, yeah, that's Ghana. And then there is another country here. I can't quite see it on the slide. But next to that is Egypt. Then let's look at the chart. As you can see, since 1957 to 2003, right, two countries are noticeably absent, which is Sierra Leone and Gambia. On the winning side, right, you don't see Sierra Leone. I don't see it. On the runners up, right, you don't see it. Um, Guinea won it once, and that's it. And I did a little summary here that shows the frequency of the winners. So they won it twice, Cameroon 5 times, Congo once, DR Congo 2, Egypt 7 times, like I said earlier, Ghana 4 times, Ivory Coast 3 times, and Senegal, they won it in, I think it was 2021. They've only won it once. Then when it comes to runner up, you can see that Egypt have won it. So combined, Egypt had a lot more trophies than all the other African countries combined. Then we have Ghana, Ivory Coast. What do you think is the reason why? You know, I mean, I know it pains me, and I suspect it pains you too, that you don't see Gambia on this list. I don't see Sierra Leone on this list. But we also see other countries within our sub region, which is West Africa, on the list. Like we see Senegal, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, and Ghana. What are your thoughts about this? Why are we not on this list?
Well, to be quite honest with you, let me just go back to talking about Gambia actually qualifying out of their group the first time that they played the AFCON. They went all the way to the quarterfinals, I guess, if not the quarterfinals, the knockout stage. But this is very simple. It's the lack of investment at grassroots level. It's also the lack of investment at facility level too. You look at Sierra Leone, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure they lack the facilities needed to support whatever grassroots investment they are going to put in. Gambia, for instance, we don't have a stadium right now. We have to go and play in Morocco. I'm not sure if Sierra Leone can host a home game, or they probably were banned too. So all these factors, and of course the corruption of selecting the right players, and all the African politics into our football, you factor all this in. The simplest fact is we are not putting enough money in grassroots football and enough time in grassroots football. Simple model is Senegal. Senegal won the AFCON 2 years ago. If you go back to 10 years ago, Senegal invested in Generation Foot Academy. They invested in a lot of other academies where you now seeing the Sadio Manes coming out of, you now seeing the Ghana Gays, Everton coming out of, used to play for PSG. You now see the Pape Matar Sarr playing in Sports, Tottenham, coming out. They have invested so much, and it's pretty simple. What you put in most cases, you get back, or you even get more. Senegal had won the under 17. The same year they had won the under 20, under 23. They had won the African championship, and they had won the beach championship in Africa, and also won the AFCON. So they cleaned out Africa, basically because 10 years ago they had a plan, put in so much money, put in time, put in so much resources into it. What I mean by resources is their ex-players that played abroad and have the technical know-how, also have the education in coaching, were brought back and given these grassroots development projects to lead. And now we're seeing that success. So we're gonna see more of Senegal in this data in the long run. And if Sierra Leone and Gambia don't pick these pieces together and also have a plan, you'll continue to not see us on this table.
Yeah, and that's a valid point. Is about making sure you have a structure in place, a system, a workable system, and you highlighted Senegal as a case study, which is very important. And some people might want to challenge that because of the performance of, um, you know, this last AFCON, but we should not discount the level of intentional resources that were poured into Senegal football over the past 10 years, right? We know sometimes, when you enter into this competition, things happen. You may not have the outcome that you're looking for, but we shouldn't discount the fact that Senegal, they have a structure in place. They have a system in place. And these are some of the systems that we, meaning Sierra Leone and Gambia, need to study, and not just Senegal. So when we look at this chart, there are other countries that are also doing well, like, countries like Egypt, right? There are other countries within the West African sub-region that are doing well in their own right, and even, Ivory Coast, right? And one thing that is very prevalent here in the United States or in the Western world is that when you want to succeed in your organization, be it business, be it sports, be it nonprofit, you need to institute what we call best practices, right? You've got to institute best practices, meaning what is it that works for others that I can emulate? That is what is absent in countries like Senegal, I'm not Senegal, Gambia, Sierra Leone, or even Liberia, right? And like you rightly said, Senegal, they have a system in place. But in some of our discussions privately, you've talked about how Senegal, way back, they used to come to Gambia to play with Gambians, and they understudy some of the models that Gambia had put in place. They understudied it, they went back, and then they identify some of the gaps within your model. And pretty much what they did was fine tune it so that it can work for them. They customize it in a way that it's going to work for them. Um, what do you think we need to do in Sierra Leone or Gambia to ensure that we have this structure and systems in place, using Senegal as a case study here, like you rightly point out?
Yes, it's basically going to come down to looking at what we have and what we don't have. When Gambia won the under 17 African Championship more than 15 years ago, and they went to the World Cups with the under 20s and all, like you rightly said, Senegal came to Gambia and looked at our project and say, we really like what you are doing. We want to take some of it. But they did not just stop there. When they went back, they said, listen, we love what Gambia is doing, but they are missing this, they are missing that, they are missing this, they are missing that. We need to get that and put it around what we got from Gambia. And the simple answer is the facilities. You cannot develop grassroots football if the kids don't have a standard pitch to play on. When these kids go to play in international tournament, they play in standard pitches. Gambia does not have pitches for kids to compete. All our facilities are bad and out of shape. Senegal went back and make sure they had enough stadiums and make sure they have enough academies, and not just academies, but student athlete academies where they can stay and get educated and play the game on the pitch and also learn the game in the class too. So there are so many pieces that they got right that we can look back and say, listen, these guys used to come here and study what we were doing right. What have changed? What is the difference between our model and their model? If we can bridge that gap, then we even go further and say, listen, now that we have bridged the gap between the two models, what can we add to these models to even make it more impressive than Senegal and than Senegal. Sierra Leone and Gambia need to look at their sports, not just football, and go with a plan like that.
Yeah, and outside of this, restructuring your module and making sure you institute best practices, right? I want us to look at the educational structure within the schools in the Western world, right? And how they have sports and education intertwined, right? So in my experience, right, so I have three kids. My son, right, he's in high school. He wasn't born in Sierra Leone. All my kids are born here in the United States. My son did not play soccer the way or football the way we played it back in Sierra Leone, which is like you know how we do it in Africa, right? In Gambia or Sierra Leone, you go out there in the streets, you go out there in some field around the corner, you play. You don't have that here because the way the system is, but you have it in the schools. The schools are intentionally built to include sports so that they complement each other. The first time I visited his middle school, their stadium, I was blown away, because my daughter, she wasn't into sport that much. I take that back. She was more into lawn tennis. She was doing that in high school. She's in college now, so I didn't have the opportunity to go check out like their stadium. So I went to a middle school stadium, right? And I'm looking at the pitch, and I was like, whoa, man, it was very standard. And even the track for athletics, like, if you want to do 400 meters and all of these things, this is standard. And so as they practiced, they rotated their practices in various middle schools. So I would travel to different schools. And then I was able to identify the consistency, like, okay, wait, in all the schools, they have this stadium that is so standard. And they have physical education as part of their curriculum in a way that the kids that wants to get into sport, they are motivated to get into it. And I'm not going to say that we do not have physical education as part of our educational curriculum in Sierra Leone. We do. And as a matter of fact, I took physical education in my secondary school days. But what I'm trying to point out here is that in order for us to change the narrative and make meaningful progress within sports, right, and education, you got to start from the basics, like you said, right? You need to meet the kids where they are. You need to start from the school level, right? How do you refine the curriculum in a way that it addresses sports in a way that it would benefit the kids and that they're motivated? But beyond the motivation and the actual curriculum, you do have physical infrastructure in place, right, that can attract more students to want to go into sport, be it football, be it athletics, be it volleyball or lawn tennis or cricket or what have you, right? You need to have the physical infrastructure. Sadly, most of the schools, at least in Sierra Leone, they haven't invested in the physical infrastructure as it relates to sport. So most of the schools don't have a standard football field. You don't. So this is where the failure starts, right? You don't have a standard athletics field. And the policymakers, they know that. They travel a lot. They come to the Western world. They see what is happening. And nowadays, you don't have to travel. You can go on YouTube. You can see some schools in the Western world that live stream their program, and you can see like these schools have these facilities. And it's not by accident that most of the trophies is being won by, when it comes to the World Cup, it's most of the trophies is being won by countries that have more structure in place. It's not by accident. So I don't like to talk about politics, but this is intertwined with our politics, because in order for you to make meaningful progress, the policymakers need to be intentional about what they want to achieve. Set a goal, walk towards it. And it needs to be strategic in a way that, okay, let's have a 10 years plan. Let's have a 15 years plan. Sierra Leone or Gambia may not qualify or get all the way to the final game and win the trophy in 2 years or in 4 years. But we know what we're putting in place now. Come 10 years, that is our expectation. That everybody should know Sierra Leone or Gambia that when you have AFCON, it is no doubt that they are going to be at the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and the finals. Sometimes fluke happens, like what happened to Senegal. We get that. But when you have the infrastructure in place with all the support system, people can see the fluke like, yeah, they have the system in place. It just didn't work out well for them. But we don't even have it. What are your thoughts around the infrastructure within the schools and facilities in Gambia?
Well, I want to just change the last sentence that you said about fluke. I think if you're talking about fluke, Gambia was for fluke and Senegal wasn't a fluke. Because, like we both said here, Senegal had a structure, had a plan, and they rode with it. It wasn't a short term plan, it was a long term plan. They had to wait for when the time is right to reap these successes. Gambia was a fluke. Gambia went to the quarterfinals, their first attempt, and we all know what happened the second time that we got there. We couldn't even win one game. So that shows you with no plan, you can be successful for a short term, but in the long run, you're going to get exposed. In terms of facilities, you are right. Everywhere you go, the countries that win the most have the most facilities. If you
Yep.
go to Egypt, they have the best league in Africa. They have the best stadiums in Africa. Now Morocco is catching up. They have the best players in Africa. And before, Egypt used to win the AFCON without even having players in Europe. They were paid very good. They don't want to leave Egypt because they have that structure. I want to believe their school system too is set up that way. And I want to deviate outside of infrastructure like physical buildings and also talk about infrastructure in a way that we cannot measure physically. We
Mhm.
spoke about leadership in this pre-show conversation.
Correct.
And leadership is in sports. You see teams giving out captains. You see teams, having coaches. The coaches are the leaders. The captains in the field are the coaches. They're all leaders. It begs the question, do we have leadership classes or seminars, even if we don't have this into our school curriculums? Do we have seminars in either of the countries? What I did was I tried to find out. I spoke to my teacher friends in Gambia because growing up in Gambia, I do not remember one class or even a topic that covered leadership, you
Correct.
know. So I could not. I went to find out, and it's still the same. The good thing is there's this group called TWB, the Women Boss. They mainly focus on developing women or girls into tomorrow's leaders. So the Women Boss and Utopia Spa and Global Wellness are having a huge social impact in these areas. Leadership, they recognize the need to nurture and groom and empower young girls into the next generation leaders. And part of what they do is give them these skills that are required, skills like leadership exposure, public speaking skills, critical thinking. Again, you can tie critical thinking into sports because
Right.
every single time you need to think, what's the next move? What's my opponent's next move? Some of these skills includes mentorship, self-awareness, personal development, a lot of areas. And I want to commend them for going out there, not waiting for a school education system to put this in place. They got it and say, listen, we're gonna go and do it. As small as it is better than not having anything in place. So kudos to them on that side. And like I want to ask before I move into the next one, do you have leadership classes in secondary school, high school, primary school in Sierra Leone? Have you experience one or a topic?
I don't know if they're doing it right now. I haven't really researched that. I know when I was in school way back, we did not have that. I took my first official leadership class here in the United States, right? So there was nothing like that. Nothing like that is embedded into the school curriculum. So you're correct to talk about how they can benefit from having a much more structured system in place for sport with regards to leadership and teamwork. And since you guys have the TWB, I think that is a great start. And for some people, it might not make sense because this is talking about women, but we need to understand that in sports we should not limit our attention only to men. It's not just a man's game, right? There are other countries that have intentionally invested on their women, right? And people can make money out of it. You have, within the Premier League, you have the female side of all those teams, right? They're always looking for players. And I don't know, like, even you have the female World Cup, right? I don't know if I've seen any player, whether it's at the Premier League or the MLS here, where that lady is from Gambia or Sierra Leone. We haven't really paid attention into that area when we're talking about sports. We think like it's a man thing, it's a man thing. But like you rightly said initially in a pre-show discussion, we're talking about monetization of sports and creating value so that you're approaching it not just as a recreational sport, but from an entrepreneurial mindset business, so that you know that you can make money out of this, but you have to think it through. You have to approach it the right way. Otherwise, you're not going to make the money. This is what is happening in countries like Egypt, where sadly, most of our home based players, they end up going to places like Egypt, Turkey, and there's nothing wrong with them going there. But that tells you that they're doing something that is right, that we are not doing. At what point does Gambia and Sierra Leone becomes a destination for other countries, right? So if there is a young Egyptian youth, are they looking forward to playing, international football in Gambia, in Ghana, or in Sierra Leone? We should be thinking that way. We lay premium on getting our folks out of the country, which is fine. They need to have a range of options, but within that option, your home needs to be part of that option. As a player, they need to understand that they can play and be successful and make money home base. So in Sierra Leone, we have like the Bow Rangers, we have like Eastern Lions. They're playing, but you have to play at a level that at some point people, or let me be specific, the scouts that are looking for good players, they can identify you and they can bring you over, whether it's Egypt, whether it's Turkey, or whether it's in UK, the Premier League, or in Italy, right? But at the same time, you should not be thinking about, well, at the end of the day, I want to go out, because you can still make good money within your country when you have the structure and system in place. Sort of what is happening in the Premier League, right? You have a lot of players in Premier League. They're just born like British citizens. That's where they are. That's where they make the money. Yes, sometimes you have personal aspiration. You're like, no, I want to go play in the La Liga. I want to play in the Bundesliga. That's like a personal choice. But it doesn't mean you can't play for the bigger teams out there in your own country, in England. They have that option, right? But it's by design, because the country, their sports and their education, they laid a lot of premium on that system. They invested in it, and it has paid out for them.
And we're still going to talk about sport and education. Leadership is a topic that we can branch out of. We can go places with it. And it's all going to come back to us in Gambia and Sierra Leone. What type of leaders do we have spearheading our projects?
Correct.
The opportunities that they had at a grassroots level, at a student age level, primary school level, secondary school level, they were not equipped with these leadership qualities, so that when they get the opportunity in the future, they can give us the same projects as Senegal or Egypt or stuff. I want to just talk about the East Manchester Academy
Hmm.
in UK.
Is that on your slide here?
Yeah, but it would not blow up to the size that,
Okay, that's fine.
unfortunately. And I want to tie this to us in Africa. Yeah. So you look at this academy, they have kids from the age of 11, I believe, or 10, all the way to 16. But they, for their leadership programs in school, even if you are at least, we watched the last final where Liverpool and Chelsea played. Some of the players won the trophy with Liverpool, and then the next day were paraded in school. They were in grade 10 or grade 11 or 12. So they are still student athletes. But guess what? At 11-year-old in UK is given a leadership advantages that our kids don't have, or even our adults don't have, or even our leaders don't have. For example, let me be quick with this. They cater for every student, all type of students. One of the responsibilities they have in the principal student leaders, these kids are usually around the age of 10 and 11, to be a voice for their fellow students, to be ambassadors of anti-bullying, and this is we're still talking about um, education and
Hmm.
sports. But the interesting thing here, the last one was to also be involved in school improvement projects. If a kid is used to getting involved in improvement projects, when that kid grows older and becomes the Sierra Leonean president for the Football Association or Gambia for the Football Federation, he's already built to have these leadership skills and improve our project. If you move to the student leaders, so if these principal student leaders, they have to be voted in, they had to be interviewed by the principal. But if you move to the student leaders, there's an easier route to get there. But I'll just jump into the same school improvement project. Now, this group of people have community improvement projects. At a community level, do you have parks in Sierra Leone? You have a lot of parks in Silver Spring. If your child wants to go ride his bike, he can go to the park or use the swing or play football. There are recreational parks out there.
Correct.
So these students are being built to be community leaders in the future, to improve community projects. If that doesn't fit you, and unluckily when you got interviewed you could not get in, they have extended leadership team, where here is a mixture of self-selected and targeted students. So you could be picked out, or you could even, say, I want to be part of this because I did not make that interview. You see how they're catering for everyone. And these guys are also um, given the opportunity to get involved in personal development. Let's develop you personally. That way, the next time you can make that interview and get involved in community projects or school improvement projects. And it goes further to house and form captains, where one student perform plus 4 house captains per house from year 10 to 11, about 52 students in total. Think about it. They get elected into a form group, and they oversee the house and coordinate every single interhouse. We used to have interhouse. These
Hmm.
kids would coordinate it, not the teachers. So at that level, you can see they're already building up these kids to be leaders of tomorrow. And so 4 categories you can fit in one, definitely. If you cannot fit in all 4, you can definitely fit in one. And they are involved in charity drives, inter-house and inter-school competitions. So back to the education that we are talking about. When we talk about sport, most people just talk about sports, but we don't talk about the education part of it. We don't talk about grades. I know I'm dragging this thing a little
No,
bit longer,
that's fine.
but
That's fine.
grades are very, very important. I understand in Sierra Leone, when I spoke to my friend Samuel Abiose Cole, who was living in Gambia for 18 years, he understands the rotten system of student athletes in Gambia. You don't have to have the grades, just be good in what you do. Be the best football player, be the fastest runner. We would put you into the best schools just so you can compete for us. At some level, you don't even have to attend classes, which is amazing. But I understand in Sierra Leone, he said, listen, you need to have the grade first before you can even be admitted to that school and play. Now, I don't know if this is general, but at least he said this is how it is. How it is. In the US, it's the same. When you play college football or college soccer or whatever it is, you are expected to keep a certain GPA. If the GPA drops below that, you cannot play. So more to the Gambian athletes that are out there looking to go pro one day, the football is going to expire one day. And then all you have is what you've learned from school or what other traits you have outside of football. They need to take education first, basically, before even talking more about sports. Over to you now.
Yes, John, and thanks for bringing that up because football is a very short-lived career, right? You can make a lot of money if you are successful to a point where, you become a millionaire. I mean, in the likes of the Didier Drogba, Eto, and all of that. Those are examples, right? But at the
Mhm.
same time, you need to have some level of education. Why? Not everybody is going to be Samuel Eto'o. Not everybody is going to be Didier Drogba. Not everybody is going to be Ronaldo. Not everybody is going to be Messi. So you already know that. So you always need to have a plan B. And this is the same discussion I have with my son. Interestingly enough, that you brought that up. A week ago, I participated in a parent teacher conference, and this was in person. I had to go to the school, and this parent teacher conference wasn't about talking about the school and all of that. It was specifically about sports. So the sports season starts in March, right?
Mhm.
My son made it to the JV team, junior varsity team. So he's playing central back, right? So I had to attend that meeting. And what the school did is explain to us what the season is about. There are different types of sport. They have boys lacrosse, girls lacrosse, boys soccer, girls soccer. They have lawn tennis. They have so many things. But at the end of the day, we had to break down into little groups where we're talking specifically about the sport that your kid is playing, right? So for me, I was in the soccer slash football room, and
Mhm.
what they talked about is exactly what you said about the grades, right? They made it very clear, parents, you got to make sure you talk to your kids.
Mhm.
We are very strict about this. Just because you made it to the JV team doesn't necessarily mean you forgot about your academic performance. It doesn't mean that you can you can just be playing and be scoring goals but don't perform
Mhm.
academically. If you don't perform, we are dropping you out of the team.
That's
They
it.
made it very clear to us. So this is exactly what you're talking about. But we don't even have those things in place in Sierra Leone or in Gambia. Talking about interhouse and all of these things where back in the days we're having interhouse competition. Like they're making it for fun, recreationally, which is fine. But you need to understand the tremendous life skills that your kid or your
Mhm.
child can acquire from participating in team sports. It is a life skill. It's not just about, playing for fun. I mean, we talked about this, the whole leadership and teamwork that you can learn, building your confidence, your self-esteem, you know, making sure that you're physically fit, which is a benefit for your overall health, body, mind, and soul, right? Also making sure that you can have good network, like a larger network, right? Because
Yeah,
the folks that you play together with in a team, they can be a lifelong friend, right? You can have a broader network. So these are all of like the benefits that you can have from participating in sports, whether it's football, whether it's tennis, whether it's cricket. But again, it goes down to making sure the policymakers are doing the right thing, right? Putting the
absolutely.
structures in place, identifying the gaps, and putting a strategic plan in place so that within the next 5, 10 years, you are seeing a gradual progress and everybody can see that, yes, Sierra Leone is really doing well now in sports. Gambia is really doing well now in sport because when individual effort, it doesn't go a long way. It will never. You have to have a team effort with a system that is in place so that even when that one individual is out of the team, right, it shouldn't make that much of an impact because you have an overall system in place for the team. So I know we've done about 40. We started at 2:05, so it's like 2:49 now. So we're like 44 minutes. What else do you want to cover? Because we're going to fine tune this as we move forward. We're probably going to be skipping some Saturdays, but mostly we're going to be having this conversation on Saturdays. And for those that are on watching, feel free to comment, ask your questions. We want to make this really participatory, and sometimes we'll have to do it in a way where we open it so people can join us also on the live and
Yeah.
just throw out their comments. We need to start this conversation. It needs to be out there. People need to hear it so that we can take active steps to boost our overall sports and education in Sierra Leone and Gambia. And it's very interesting because you can bring your perspective from within Gambia, but also, the difference that you saw when you were playing in Gambia and when you moved over to the state. It is very important because the perspective that you bring is a dual perspective. And sometimes the folks that are in charge of these teams in Sierra Leone or in Gambia, they don't necessarily have that dual perspective. And I always say, you know what you know, right? There's a lot more that you don't know because of exposure, and it's not your fault. Things just happen. This is how life is. But it's always good to capture more knowledge from others that have been out there that have multiple perspective and can speak to different use cases, different scenarios. So at the end of the day, you can put up a plan in place, construct a plan in place, implement it, that 5-10 years down the road you will be very proud of what you've achieved, whether it's in Sierra Leone or Gambia. So, John, what final last word do you have that you want to throw out there, so we can wrap this up?
Well, I actually have maybe one or two slides that I wanted to add on so we can wrap up
Yeah,
really quickly, because it's in as important as it is that we are talking about sports, we are talking about education, health and well-being is also a very important topic among young fellow Gambians and Sierra Leoneans. Um, if you look at it, this is how I put it. Whatever we do, if we're not healthy, we cannot do it anymore. We can talk
correct.
about student athletes here all day. We can talk about having good grades all we want. But if we are not healthy, we would struggle to be our best at this side. I just want to talk about some of the things that us in Gambia are struggling with. I understand when I spoke to Samuel Cole, he told me Sierra Leone had a code free healthcare, but it's not necessarily free healthcare because the corruption is there. If you don't take out money, you would not be treated. This is basically everywhere. But in Gambia, we don't have that. Our health sector struggles a lot. You're talking about maternal mortality, epidemics, HIV, malaria, tuberculosis. You talk about our mental health. Not just too long ago, this last month, about 3 people made the news for committing suicide. And guess what? They're all young. One of them was a student. So if you allow me, I just want to touch on this.
Yeah, go
Substance
ahead.
abuse too. Substance abuse too is a major problem in Gambia right now, and mostly among the young fellas. Talking about maternal, I just wanted to share a few numbers here. You could see in 2023, 800 deaths reported in 2020. Sorry, not 2023, in 2020. And this is all maternal mortality, pregnancy related death. This number 20 years ago was about 1,050. So you could see we've reduced it, but not even more than 20% or 25%. We are still struggling with this. At a broader level, Gambia is also trying to reach targets that the UN has set for 2030 with this maternal mortality. Also trying to deal with preventable deaths of newborns and children under the age of 5. Also, trying to reduce the neonatal mortality. We talk about the epidemics, hepatitis, waterborne diseases, other communicable diseases. These are all major problems that are destabilizing our healthcare. Premature mortality from non-communicable diseases. We need to have solutions, more preventive measures, treatment measures, promote mental health and well-being, strengthen and prevent and treat substance abuse. The narcotic right now in Gambia, any drug you could find in Philly, this might be an exaggeration, but 50% of drugs you can find in Philly, you probably would find in Gambia right now. And this is harmful. It's very, very harmful. I don't even want to dive into the road traffic. We just had our first, what do you call it? Our first I-95 in Gambia. And
Okay.
people are losing it. The people are losing it. They don't know how to drive. The government have not done the right thing to bring back these guys and teach them how to use the I-95 properly. They're not exiting well. They built a roundabout where this roundabout was supposed to free traffic, but now you can spend literally 30 minutes just trying to go past that roundabout because the drivers are not educated, who has priority, who is to yield and all that kind of stuff. And all this thing is, causing major, major accidents and major, major lives. Just 3 days ago, 7 people lost their life over a bus that got into an accident with a truck on the I-95.
Hmm.
7 people. And these 7 people were going to a funeral
Hmm.
from up country. They were going to a funeral in one of the towns. And instead of going and sympathizing with your family members, now you have 7 other people in that family, including a husband and wife. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. I know Gambians would follow this video, and I would not do justice to this show without highlighting these areas.
No, that is really important. It is everything you do is centered around how healthy you are, right? Your health comes first. Even if you're thinking about, just launching a business and working as crazy as you can, you need health. You have to be healthy. If you're not healthy, that business is not going forward. I don't care how you structuring, you need to be healthy. It comes with a lot of stress. You need to be able to absorb all of those stresses, right? But at the end of the day, taking care of yourself, it's a choice. But you also need the infrastructure in place. And it's funny that you talked about the first quote unquote I-95 in Gambia, because I see that all the time when I visit Sierra Leone, the way they're driving, and I tell them, and their response is, well, this is how we do it.
Yes,
This
sir.
so we did drive now. And my response back to them is like, we did not invent the car. Okay.
Mhm,
The people that invented the car, they came up with rules of how you should drive it because they know it can be a death trap, it can be deadly,
mhm.
but you don't want to follow it. Good luck with that. There's a reason why certain routes they would say it's 25 miles an hour only or
Yeah.
35 miles. And when you try to push it from 35 to 70, you get results like that. So there's a whole lot that we can talk about, and how everything is intertwined, man. Everything is intertwined, looking at the health sector and even education. Recently, I think for Sierra Leone, there was a kind of education reports that came out. I don't know if you guys do that. It came out last week. So they did like kind of a survey. They surveyed, I think, 400 schools. And I don't
Mhm.
think it was a good representation of all the number of schools that we have. And most of the things that I saw in that report, I was scratching my head, and I'm like, when you sprinkle politics into things like this is why we don't make meaningful changes in our economy. But at the end of the day, if we want to see progress in Sierra Leone or in Gambia, we just need to keep talking about this and hope that the people can understand and we can see some changes gradually. But it takes time, man. I mean, that's my only like I don't want to be pessimistic, but we know where we're from. We're from Africa.
Yeah.
You put these things out there. People know the right thing to do, but for whatever reason, they don't pay attention to it. They do the wrong thing, and people suffer with their lives for it. So, but I appreciate you coming on board and talking about this. Let's continue to touch base, and we can plan on putting out a schedule so people know when we're gonna be out. Um, I know that Saturday is a little bit challenging for most folks because people on Saturday evenings, right?
Saturdays. Yeah.
And
Yes.
and we need to look at the time because of those that are observing the Ramadan. I think 7 o'clock is around the time that they are wrapping up for the day and trying to break their fast. So
Mhm.
for next week, we might, we'll touch base and figure out what's gonna work for both of us and people that are out there. So thank you very much, and looking forward to greater discussions, down the road.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just going to do a last quick shout out to Samuel Abiose Cole. He is talking about the amount of talent that is in Sierra Leone. There's a lot of talents there, but there's not enough exposure. So he's calling for scouts, international scouts, to go check them out. Talents like Kumba Juliet Bremer, women football. Last season,
Mhm.
she had 30 goals last season, and this season alone, after 10 games, she's already got 19 goals, and she is very young. This is a 21-year-old striker, a lot of
Mm.
potential ahead. There's also a 6 foot 2 or 3 defender, a 20-year-old Sai Marta. I'm not gonna use her last name because I would butcher it. It's
Okay.
Qurashie, but also a top footballer. Tall defender. Last season played in the Turkish league, Super League, but currently back in Sierra Leone. So just to put it out there, you never know who's gonna, where this video is gonna fall onto. That they know Sierra Leone had these talents there.
Well, I haven't paid attention to the female side of football in Sierra Leone, but I'll do some more research. But those are great information, and we need to put it out there. If you don't talk about your talent, people are not going to know. Unfortunately, we don't have all the tools in place, like we were discussing earlier. That if a scout goes online today and try to search for talents in Gambia and Sierra Leone, you know, are they going to find
Yeah.
them? No. Why? Because we have not put the tools in place in our respective country. Because if we did, they can find it. Right? This is the beauty of technology when people say the world is a global village. But how are you participating in that village? Right? Making sure that your neighbor can find you within the village because it's truly a village. But when your neighbor
Yeah.
can't find you, you cannot benefit from what the village has to offer. That's the hard truth. So there's a lot more work that the leaders need to put into place to make sure that talents like these, the world can easily find them. They can, and I suspect the same is true for Gambia. Like you guys would have some 20, 21 year old woman out there that is like really terrific, you know, but like nobody knows their story, nobody knows about them. So by the time they discover them, they've passed their prime already, right? So now what they have to offer to the rest of the world will be like maybe 2, 3, or 4 years max, and that's it. Versus when they are discovered earlier at the age of 20, 20 on, they have about good 10, 15 years to offer, all they have to the world and maximize the value, right? The benefit that they can get from, the services that they offer. So let's continue to talk about this, but the discussion is going to be endless when you want to talk about things that needs to be addressed. But again,
Yes.
this is the starting point. We're going to continue to talk about it. And for folks that are out there, thanks for joining. Again, if you missed the start of the show, John is from Gambia. He currently resides in UK with his family. I'm out here in the state. He's a good friend of mine. We crossed paths way back in 2008. And some of these things that we're talking about today publicly, we've been talking about it in private. And the idea is that let's just bring it out publicly so people can hear it and participate. So if you're out there and you want to participate, feel free. You can send me an inbox, or always post a comment, respond, and we'll always come back and discuss these things. So thank you all very much for watching, and wish everyone a pleasant rest of the weekend.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, man.
All right, then.